Well, 1975 was a great year for music, but there were some albums that were maybe a little overlooked. We'll talk about that coming up next. Underappreciated albums from 1975 on Music Meanderings. I'm Mike Lamneck. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Music Meanderings. Won't you take the time to subscribe to the channel and comment on this video? That all helps the channel out, and we certainly do appreciate it. Well, 1975, great music and marked by significant events, including Watergate, that scandal. Also, of course, the end of the Vietnam War. The rise of disco music and the debut of popular TV shows. Who remembers Saturday Night Live back when it was funny and entertaining? Yeah, SNL. That debuted in 1975, as did Wheel of Fortune. Also, the sinking of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald on Lake Superior that would be the following year immortalized in song by, of course, Gordon Lightfoot and the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Legendary albums released 50 years ago include Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks, AC/DC's debut High Voltage, the classic Alice Cooper album, A Welcome to My Nightmare, also Queen's A Night at the Opera, Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, and the juggernaut double album release by Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, also the Tommy motion picture soundtrack. Just to mention a few, it was a fantastic year for music. Here's 10 albums released in 1975 that might have slipped through the cracks and are maybe a little underappreciated. And I'm just doing this month by month, so no particular order here as far as significance. Starting in January with Dr. Feelgood and Down by the Jetty. No, I'm not talking about the Motley Crue album Dr. Feelgood. I'm talking about the blues rock band called Dr. Feelgood, an English-based pub rock band that formed back in 1971 and featured guitarist Wilco Johnson, who was pretty influential amongst guitarists with his unique style of playing just finger picking. And that allowed him to be able to play riffs and solos and bounce back and forth, gave him a very unique sound. But their debut came out in 1975, and it was called Down by the Jetty. And Turned Some Heads was a great release for a debut for this band. And also, they had another album come out that was a great album as well, 1975's Malpractice. But Down by the Jetty, considered by many to be one of the great debut albums of the 70s. She Does It Right. Also, the John Lee Hooker cover Boom Booms on there, The More I Give. They had a little bit of a hit with the song Roxette. That Ain't No Way to Behave, I Don't Mind. So many great songs. If you're into blues rock, maybe you haven't discovered this band yet. I know until recently I hadn't. A friend told me about them. Dr. Feelgood, a great place to start to listening to them is their debut, maybe unrecognized great album from 1975, and Down by the Jetty. Moving on to February releases in 1975. Again, a year that had so many great album releases that some slipped through the cracks or were maybe recognized later on as great albums. Well, one of those is a group of studio musicians, LA studio musicians that formed their own band and released their debut in 1975, talking about Ambrosia. And this album had a couple different covers. I'll show you the other one as well. Yeah, I think I prefer the other one, but this is the cover I have. I think this is the reissue cover of Ambrosia's excellent debut. Now, Ambrosia, if you don't know much about the band, their first few albums were progressive rock. And then by the late 70s, early 80s, they had more morphed into a soft rock band that had some huge hits like You're the Only Woman and Biggest Part of Me. But this album had a couple radio hits on it. Nice, very nice. Got some radio recognition. And actually, their first radio hit was Holding On to Yesterday, featured on this record as well. A great place to start if you haven't listened to Ambrosia and their 1975 debut. Well, also in February, the second album by American progressive rock outfit Kansas came out. The excellent Song for America, classic cover. I remember the 70s, that was a popular t-shirt. Many people had this t-shirt, the Kansas, and their Song for America album cover. Doesn't say Song for America anywhere on the cover. I would imagine when this album was released, it probably had a sticker on it that said Song for America across it. But Song for America is on here. Also Lamplight Symphony, Down the Road, Lonely Street, many of their early classics before they became really popular, of course, with the Left Overture album. Soft rock hit makers America and their 1975 March 19th release, and it's called simply Hearts. Great album, maybe overlooked by some America fans, but the early America releases are just fantastic. Every song on them. Of course, this featured the big hits. Sister Golden Hair was on this one, which got a lot of radio airplay. Also the song Woman Tonight, which was a minor hit for them as well, and the hit Daisy Jane, all featured on this excellent 1975 release by America and Hearts. Well, we're cruising through some 1975 albums. A great year for music, by the way. 1975 albums that perhaps were overlooked because it was such a great year for music. There were many blockbuster releases that some albums just slipped through the cracks. Now, there are a lot of fans of Grand Funk that would think the Grand Funk Live album is one of their best efforts. A good album. I'm not a huge fan of it because the production, I'm sure there are remastered releases of Grand Funk Live that sound better than the original pressing, but pretty muddy release, and I'm just not a big fan of that album. I prefer this Grand Funk Live album, and I know it probably puts me in the minority with Grand Funk fans because Grand Funk Live is considered to be like their classic live statement, but I just prefer this one, perhaps because it's the first one I heard. I heard this before I heard Grand Funk Live, but just an excellent 1975 double live by Grand Funk with foot stomping music, rock and roll, soul, of course, the epic Closer to Home, Heartbreakers, Some Kind of Wonderful, Shining On, The Locomotion, Black Licorice were an American band. Hard to beat this one, and the production much better than on the earlier Grand Funk Live. Grand Funk Railroad, 1975's Caught in the Act. Well, recently some heartbreaking news for Electric Light Orchestra fans, and Jeff Lynne going to call it quits after a very successful long career. He's not going to be able to tour anymore. Not sure, he might still put out some new music, but as far as touring, we've probably seen the last of the big Electric Light Orchestra tours. Well, this next album was released in 1975, and just a classic Electric Light Orchestra album that might be overlooked. Again, this is a case where it might have been overlooked when it came out, but as the years pass, it is widely regarded as a classic by them, as are all their early releases. Fire on High, Waterfall, of course, the epic Evil Woman, big hit for them. Strange Magic, another big hit for them. Poker, that was a concert favorite and kind of a deeper cut that a lot of fans really liked. Electric Light Orchestra and their 1975 release, Face the Music. We're taking a look at some albums that might be a little underappreciated from 1975. Perhaps you've heard of these albums, and again, some of these albums have aged really well. When they came out in 1975, they weren't real popular, but people really gravitated towards them as time went on. I recently found out about this great Welsh rock trio, Budgie and Bandolier, their 1975 album. Released September 5th, 1975. And Budgie always had great album art, as they do on Bandolier, with their Budgie parakeet holding a rifle there on horseback. Breaking all the house rules, also Slip Away, Who Do You Want for Your Love, and the epic two-part Napoleon Bonaparte I, Napoleon Bonaparte II, featured on Budgie's 1975 release, Bandolier, perhaps an overlooked classic from that year. Elton John, 1975, Rock of the Westies. And honestly, I was a huge Elton John fan from the beginning. And this was the last Elton John album I purchased for a while. Again, underrated. It came on the heels of Captain Fantastic, which was released earlier that year and considered by many to be the best Elton John album. I would be one of those people. That is my favorite Elton John album, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, released earlier in 1975. It was hard to top, really. And radio was just saturated with Elton John. It's hard to describe how hot an act he was in the mid-'70s. But people would go out and purchase the albums the day they were released. Now, today you can get on your favorite streaming venue and stream your song like the first day. No biggie. You can do that on your phone or from your computer chair. It took a little more effort back in the mid-'70s, didn't it? You had to actually get into your car, drive somewhere, find a place that had the album, and purchase it. Well, people did that in droves. Every time Elton John would release an album, it would, like Captain Fantastic, went to #1 on the day of its release. This album didn't sell quite as well, although it did really well. It had Island Girl, that was the hit. Also, Grow Some Funk of Your Own. But other songs that became Elton John classics in concert, like I Feel Like a Bullet in the Gun of Robert Ford, still one of my favorite deeper cuts. Dan Dare, Pilot of the Future. Not a bad song on this one, in my estimation. Captain Fantastic, follow-up, Elton John, and Rock of the Westies. I'm Mike Lamneck. It's Music Meanderings, and we're taking a look at some albums that came out in 1975 that maybe aged better than they were received when they came out. The next one is a good example of that, Thin Lizzy and Fighting, considered by many Thin Lizzy fans now to be a classic, but didn't sell all that well, and of course kind of overshadowed by their next year's release, which was their breakthrough and Jailbreak. But Fighting had a lot to offer. Rosalie, which was a Bob Seger cover. Suicide, which the band continued to do in concert. Wild One, that was kind of a hit for him. Fighting My Way Back. Also Spirit Slips Away. Ballad of a Hard Man. Freedom Song. They had really developed their sound by this point, that twin guitar harmonized attack of Thin Lizzy and Fighting from 1975. And one more as we count down 10 perhaps underappreciated albums from 1975. Now, of course, if you've heard of these albums, you have them in your collection. They're not underappreciated by you. I understand that. But what do you think some underappreciated albums from the great year for music, 1975, are? Go ahead and comment below. The last one I have on my list, and I've talked about this one before, one of my favorite Bachman-Turner Overdrive, or officially pronounced Bachman-Turner Overdrive, and their album Head On, BTO, and their excellent follow-up album to two hits they had before that. Of course, what many BTO fans would consider to be their best album, which was Not Fragile in 1974. Four-Wheel Drive in 75, which was a great album as well. Many people overlooked the follow-up to Four-Wheel Drive, which was released the same year as Four-Wheel Drive. Kind of common with the Elton John thing. They had two albums in the same year, which many bands would do back then. But unfortunately, when that was done, a lot of times one album would suffer in sales. And I think that's kind of what happened with this one. It's hard to push two albums by one band in 1 year. And Head On kind of slid through the cracks here and was unrecognized, but was a fantastic album. In fact, on my list of top BTO albums, I would list this as number 2, only to Not Fragile being number 1. Find out about Love. They do that one in concert. It's over average, man. Also, Take It Like a Man was a hit for him. And another concert favorite, deeper cut for BTO fans looking out for number 1. All on this one. Head On. Bachman, Turner Overdrive. And there you go. That's a look at 10 albums that were perhaps overlooked, underappreciated from 1975. What do you think? Make your list and include it on the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching Music Meanderings.